Conservatives plan to force more than 100 House votes through the night and into Friday, saying the government needs to offer more exemptions on carbon pricing. Now, this follows a long, tense meeting at the Natural Resources Committee last night, with Conservatives bringing forward thousands of amendments to the Sustainable Jobs Bill.
And I often hear Conservatives get quite righteous around tables like these about being silent.
I have the floor.
So for me to make my first comment of the evening and be told by Mr. Brock I should shut up because he doesn't want to hear any more from me, paraphrasing,
and I'm constantly getting interrupted by New Democrats who are committed to preventing me from speaking.
Mr. Janice,
because they don't want my constituents.
I'm going to ask you to pause, and we have a point of order.
This is disgusting, Chair. Bring these members to order and let me speak because I have the...
Mr. Blakey on the point of order.
All right, well, let's talk about that and more. We've got our weekly panel of political observers in studio. Susan Smith is principal with the Blue Sky Strategy Group. Jordan Paquet is a senior consultant with the Blue Sky Strategy Group. And Anne McGrath is the NDP's national director. Jordan, let me start with you. We're seeing these Conservative delay tactics on government spending and on that Bill C-50 at the Natural Resources Committee. What is the political calculation that Mr. Poilievre and his advisors are making here?
Sure. I mean, look, I think it's definitely to keep the pressure on, keep the House in longer so they can continue to talk about issues like the carbon tax and issues that matter to them. I think, the filibuster goes back a long time in parliamentary history. I mean, we saw the NDP use it as well back in 2011 for bills they didn't like with Harper. So it's just one of those things. They can't keep them in the House forever, but it's certainly something they'll use to drag it out a little longer.
Yeah, and Susan, as Jordan mentioned, it's not the first time we're seeing an opposition party use a filibuster, use delay tactics on something they're opposed to. We've heard the Prime Minister calling it a stunt, calling it a fundraising ploy. But do the headlines on all this about carbon pricing, about the cost of living, does that just add to the pressure that the Prime Minister and his government is facing right now?
I think the stunt it's a political stunt. It's a political tactic. Most parties have used it at some stage or another. I think at this stage of the game, as you're moving into the holidays, Canadians are tuning out on shenanigans on Parliament Hill. If they even bother to pay attention to the fact that they're moving 120 amendments or 20,000 amendments to something, they're going to think their politicians aren't doing the job that they're supposed to be doing, which is trying to get things along and make the country get ahead. So I think at this time of year, it's December, how many days till Christmas? Everybody check your Advent calendar. People are tuning out.
Yeah, and what do you think? Where do you think this leaves Parliament right now as we near the end of 2023? As we just saw in that committee, we're seeing it in the House today. There's some tension here.
No, there's definitely tension here. I think one of the problems with the Conservative tactic, because it's a tactic, and it's true, all parties use different tactics to, like the one that people keep referring to in 2011 was when the NDP did a filibuster to try and stop a Labour bill that was going to legislate postal workers back to work. And we have a very strong principle against forcing people back to work, against back to work legislation. So we did a filibuster, and I think it was effective because it was clear why we were doing it and what we were doing it for. I think the problem with this right now is that it's a bit scattershot. It's a little all over the place. It's like, doing what we just saw in the Natural Resources Committee. Then there's the Ways and Means motions. There's supply issues. It's just like, it's like throwing everything at the wall. So it's very hard to get the message out about what it's about and what you're doing to stop the thing that you think is important.
Okay, Jordan, what do you think? Is there a coherent message to all this?
Yeah, I think so. Look, I mean, it's just getting to a point in this Parliament where people are becoming frustrated. I mean, committee progress is slowing down. There's certain pieces of legislation that are attempted to be rammed through. So, look, the Conservatives are going to, every chance they get, they're continuously on this affordability message. The more days they have to continue to paint that, that's what they're going to continue to do here.
Okay, Susan, I want to turn to the House Speaker, Greg Fergus. Another hot topic in the House this week. The House Procedure Committee has taken over this matter of his speech that he delivered to the Ontario Liberal Leadership Convention last weekend. They've got 1 week to report back with a quote, appropriate remedy. That's what's in the motion.
So he didn't deliver a speech.
Well, it was a video message.
A video message.
True, a video message. But we do have the Conservatives and the Bloc saying they want him to step down. So how do you see it? Do you see a path forward for Mr. Fergus here?
I do. Again, I think this is part of silly season. This is part of the tension that's going on in the House of Commons. I don't think Mr. Fergus should have delivered that video, but I don't, which was initially pitched to him and done as something that we showed in a private gathering to someone who had been a friend and acquaintance for more than 30 years. It got played at the convention. He did not know that, and then that's why we have this discussion around this. He's recused himself from the discussions. The Speaker's removed himself from that, so Parliament can talk about it without him. They're going to go to committee and talk about it. I think that's a good thing to do, and maybe there'll be some new rules that come out, that when you're the Speaker, you can't do any of this kind. You can't do any personal videos for anybody and anything in the Speaker's robes. Maybe they'll put some more strict things around it. But Greg Fergus has come in. He's been in the job for 64 days, I think. He's tried to bring back some decorum to the House of Commons. I think the man needs to be allowed to do his job. I do not think this is a fatal mistake. I think this was a very human gesture that got misused and misplayed and has been expropriated, I would say, by the opposition.
Okay, Jordan, let me come to you then, because Conservatives have already been pretty clear on this. They want Mr. Fergus to step down even before the committee starts its study. So if all the committee comes back with next week is some of the measures that Susan's talking about here, and it stops short of actually saying Mr. Fergus needs to step down, what are Conservatives going to say at that point?
Look, I don't think there needs to be necessarily new rules. The rules are already in place. You cannot be in a partisan environment when you're Speaker. He didn't go to the convention, Susan's right. But, to send the message and, talk about getting a Liberal Premier to ultimately get elected, doing all those things in his Speaker's robes, in the Speaker's gallery, given the heightened scrutiny that would have been on the Speaker's office already, I think he should have known better at that point. Somebody should have advised him. He should have had the judgment. That's what Speakers are supposed to do. So it's problematic. It's problematic for him. Two of the biggest parties in the House of Commons no longer have confidence in him. And, we'll see what the committee decides. But it's not a great situation for him.
And Anne, we've seen the NDP say we want to wait and see what happens at this committee. We want to hear some more information. What are you looking for? What are New Democrats looking to hear from in this study that's going to make them come down one way or another here?
Well, I think we need to know, first of all, what's going on in that office. How did that happen? This is not a rookie politician. Greg Fergus has been around in politics, both as an elected and in a kind of a leadership staff role. I feel like it's surprising to me that a mistake of this level would be made in that office. In a lot of places, well, almost everywhere, the Speaker doesn't even sit in a caucus, right? So the caucus meetings happen every week. The Speaker doesn't sit in the caucus.
In the UK, the Speaker leads the party.
Exactly. But knowing that, why would I just find it astonishing that this could have happened. I also find it astonishing that you could do a video when you don't know exactly what's going to be done with it. I think that's very surprising as well. So I think what we're going to be looking for is what happened, why did it happen, what other things are going on, is there anything else? The trip to Washington and his comments with former Speaker Pelosi in Washington, all of those kinds of things, and what has to happen to make sure that nothing like that happens again.
All right, Susan, I'll let you quickly respond, Anne, here, because I know you wanted to get in.
The Speaker in the House of Commons occupies a very important role, and they also have a role outside the country. So they do meet with speakers from around the world, and it would be perfectly normal for the Speaker of the House of Commons to go to Washington and meet with present speakers or former speakers. So I don't think that's an important thing to tag Nancy Pelosi versus Paul Ryan or anything like that. He's doing his job in that. I think the committee will do its job. I look forward to the response of the committee. I think Mr. Fergus is an honorable man. He's a trailblazer in his role as the Speaker, and I think he should continue bringing the decorum that he needs to the House of Commons. It's a gong show in there. It's kindergarten on the best day. It's gotten worse. And I think I like his deftness with shutting off the mics till everybody settles down a little bit so we can actually hear the questions and the answers of what's taking place.
Okay, we have a minute left. I want to very quickly get all three of you to weigh in on the federal plan for an emissions cap on oil and gas, including carbon offsets for industry. Alberta and Saskatchewan not happy, as we expected. We don't have a lot of time, but Jordan, we've seen signals that this cap is lower than what was expected in order to perhaps head off any more court challenges over jurisdiction. What do you think?
Sure, and just full disclosure, I do some work with the Pathways Alliance, who would be affected by this as well. But listen, the irony shouldn't be lost that the minister made this announcement in Dubai. And these are the countries that are going to benefit by production and emissions caps in Canada. So it will drive jobs overseas. Alberta's right to be frustrated about it, and I imagine this will be a long, drawn-out process in court.
And Susan, how do you think the government is going to navigate this? Because they're getting criticized on both sides, from industry and from environmental groups.
Sure, and no surprise there. And I used to work for a cabinet minister who used to say when they're yelling at you from both sides, you've actually found the middle path on things. This was a campaign commitment from the Liberals to look at oil and gas emissions caps. This is an emission cap. It is not a production cap. Alberta is not, under Premier Smith and under Premier Moe in Saskatchewan, there is not a single thing that the Prime Minister and Government of Canada could do that could make that province agree. I think at this point, if the Government of Canada said Christmas Day is on December 25th, they'd find a way to disagree with it. So what's this? This is a framework that's been announced. There will be opportunity for industry, provinces, stakeholders to continue to feed in, and the regulations will come in about 6 months from now. So I think they're taking the best way forward, given the Supreme Court rulings, and it's focused on emissions caps, knocking down our GHG emissions.
All right, and I'll give the last word to you. Are we headed towards another head-to-head clash
between Alberta and Ottawa? Absolutely. It'll add to the list. I do think, though, that they did make a commitment and they have not fulfilled the commitment. So they have backed off on what they said that they were going to do. And while the oil and gas companies and the Alberta government may be kind of kicking up a fuss about this, I think they're pretty happy about it because they backed off in a pretty substantial way, and they also pushed their deadlines past the point that they need to be.
All right,
Andrew, I need to disclose that my company does work with the oil and gas sector, and I do too. I forgot to say it at the beginning, but there was a neutral observation that I made there.
No problem. Appreciate it. Thank you to all three of you tonight for your thoughts.
Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew.